In 1930, an entire class of 50 indigenous students vanished without a trace from a federal boarding school in Red Harvest, Arizona. No alarms were raised, no remains discovered, and the case quietly faded into obscurity, buried beneath dusty files and deliberate silence. But 45 years later, under the relentless glare of the desert sun, a newly elected sheriff named Walter Clayborn stumbles upon something long ignored. A detail so crucial, so haunting, it would resurrect a mystery long presumed dead. By 1975, Red Harvest was a town not just forgotten by time, but fractured by it. Once a proud hub bordering Arizona and New Mexico, it now bore the weight of unhealed wounds, racial division, economic decay, and a bitter legacy of systemic neglect. The federal boarding school had shuttered decades earlier, but its ghost lingered in every cracked wall and abandoned classroom. The crimes hadn't stopped. They had just changed form. Walter Clayborn, 48 years old and recently sworn into office, stood motionless in a narrow alleyway, suffocating under the stench of heat and sorrow. The bodies of two indigenous children, no older than 12, lay slumped against the graffiti-scarred brick. Blood clung to their dark hair like rust on metal. Walter's rough hands trembled as he knelt, eyes scanning the small fists curled in defiance, bruises, cuts, signs they had fought with everything they had. But it hadn't been enough. He snapped photos with the department's outdated camera, each click driving a nail into his conscience. Red Harvest wasn't just dangerous, it was drowning. The end of segregation-era boarding schools had left a vacuum of support for indigenous communities. Homelessness surged. Hate festered. The line between neglect and violence blurred daily. Walter marked bloodstains with chalk, bile rising in his throat. How many more had been lost in alleys like this? How many mothers had whispered their children's names into silence? "I can't," Walter muttered to Deputy Martinez, whose boots crunched softly behind him. "Take a moment, Sheriff. We've got it from here," Martinez said gently. Walter staggered back to his patrol car, each step a clash of resolve and revulsion. Shards of broken glass crunched underfoot as he drove toward the station. Each red light tormented him with visions of the children's faces. The sheriff's building loomed ahead like an old sentinel on cracked adobe legs. Inside, Walter collapsed into his chair, trying to outrun the images burned behind his eyelids. Veteran Deputy Carl Peterson entered quietly, setting down a steaming cup. "Rough scene out there, huh?" Walter barely nodded, hands gripping the mug like a lifeline. "I don't want to get used to seeing dead kids, Carl, but maybe I can get strong enough to stop it." Peterson's eyes hardened. "This'll all stop once those Indians learn to live like us." With a shrug, he turned and left. Walter sat frozen. The casual cruelty hit harder than any crime scene. If even his own men were poisoned by this mindset, what hope did justice have? He stood abruptly, coffee forgotten, and made his way to the station's archive room. The room smelled like time itself. Dust, mildew, and the slow rot of forgotten truths. Files towered in precarious stacks. Walter sifted through cases involving indigenous victims, chasing patterns, threads, any flicker of consistency. The clock vanished. Fatigue tugged at his eyes, but still he pressed on. In the farthest corner, a small door caught his attention, its wood swollen with age, a faded label barely readable. Pre-1940 storage, locked, but the frame had rotted. A firm shove and the door surrendered. Inside, cobwebs draped like mourning veils. Walter reached up, pulling a box down from the top shelf. Dust exploded in a cloud. The label read, 1930, Missing Persons, Federal Investigation. His breath caught. Back at his desk, he laid out the contents. Dozens of files, all linked to the mysterious disappearance of an entire class from the local boarding school. 50 children, no remains, no witnesses, no answers. But among the files, a black and white photograph whispered a clue. The children stood stiffly in uniform rows, but in the background, partially hidden, was a truck. Lettering barely visible was a truck. Lettering barely visible. The S.H. Styles Moving Company. Walter's pulse surged. That company still operated in town. He'd seen their trucks just this week. Deputy Miguel Herrera paused at the door. "What are you doing with that old case?" Walter looked up, eyes fierce with renewed purpose. "After today, I had to understand the beginning." "This isn't over, Miguel. It never was. These kids deserve someone who cares." Herrera shook his head. "It's a dead end, Sheriff. Let it rest." But Walter couldn't. Not anymore. Walter glanced at his watch and muttered under his breath, "Damn, almost forgot." His meeting with Mayor Krantz. It had slipped his mind entirely. Probably something related to the upcoming election, but now it held a new weight. He tucked the case files into a drawer, locking them securely, but his mind lingered on the photograph. The S.H. Styles Moving Company. Its name gnawed at his thoughts like a thorn. Outside, the late afternoon heat slammed into him like a furnace. The air shimmered above the sun-baked pavement as he crossed the courtyard towards City Hall. The building, with its old Spanish colonial architecture, stood like a monument to the town's convoluted legacy. Beauty built on bones. Walter climbed the stone steps with a rising unease. 50 children hadn't just vanished. That truck in the photo. It wasn't a coincidence. It was a key. He squared his shoulders and pushed forward, prepared to face whatever political pleasantries Mayor Krantz had in store. But as he reached the heavy oak door, he stopped. Voices filtered through the thick wood. "Excellent work as always," came the mayor's booming baritone. "This new contract will benefit both the town and your company." Another voice replied, smooth, measured, almost rehearsed. "The pleasure is ours, Mayor. S.H. Styles is proud to support your re-election. Your vision aligns perfectly with our business interests." Walter froze. That name again, S.H. Styles, the same company from the 1930 photo. His gut twisted. The door swung open, revealing a sharply dressed man in his 50s flanked by Mayor Krantz. "Sheriff Clayborn," the mayor greeted. "We didn't hear you knock." "Sorry to interrupt," Walter said, keeping his expression neutral. "No harm done," the suited man said with a smile that didn't touch his eyes. "We were just finishing up." The mayor gestured. "Sheriff, meet Simon H. Styles, Jr., owner of S.H. Styles Moving Company." Walter shook the man's hand, noting the manicured nails and expensive watch. "Pleasure to meet you, Mr. Styles." "Likewise, Sheriff. I've heard promising things about your recent election." Styles turned back to the mayor. "I'll see you at the club on Thursday." "Wouldn't miss it," Krantz said. As the two men's footsteps echoed down the marble hallway, Walter's eyes wandered to an oil painting on the wall. Franklin W. Krantz, mayor, during 1930. The current mayor's grandfather. The timeline snapped into place. Mayor Krantz returned and gestured for Walter to sit. "Let's talk about the election." Walter sat stiffly, his mind on high alert. The rise in crime, especially involving the indigenous population, has people on edge, the mayor began. "Today's murders didn't help." Walter nodded but said nothing. "We need to show results," Krantz continued. "Lower crime, safer streets. I have a solution. S.H. Styles will help us relocate a portion of the indigenous community. Peaceful, structured, a win-win. I need your department's cooperation." Walter felt a chill. "Relocate? You mean force them out?" "We're providing a better place," the mayor said with a thin smile. "Somewhere they can thrive. Details aren't your concern. Your job is to maintain order. Can I count on you?" Walter hesitated. If he refused, he might lose his post. his chance to protect them. But agreeing would be complicity. "I'll need to review the legal framework," he replied. "It's solid," Krantz snapped. "No room for debate. I want your plan by week's end." Walter rose slowly. "Understood, Mayor." "Good man," Krantz said, dismissing him. Back in the courtyard, Walter felt the sun casting long shadows, long like the legacy of injustice creeping through generations. His grandfather's voice echoed in his memory. "Sometimes the real criminals wear suits and shake your hand." At the sheriff's station, Deputy Herrera was waiting, visibly drained. "Just finished with the suspect," he said. "Tell me," Walter replied. 15-year-old named Thomas B. Blood on his hands, prints on the knife. 15, just a kid, Walter murmured. "Kept rambling," Herrera said, "about a hot place with red doors, underground. Sounded delusional." Walter's breath caught. Did he seem traumatized? Hard to say. Could be, but with no other suspects and pressure from above, he'll likely take the fall. Walter felt a familiar bitterness rise. Expediency over truth. Again. Where is he now? In South 3. But he's shaken. Wait till morning. After Herrera left, Walter opened the interrogation report, laying it beside the 1930 files. The photos of the girls haunted him, but he forced himself to look. The boys' ramblings about red doors and darkness. It mirrored something. He flipped through the 1930 files. 3 students had been found, the report claimed. 2 described being held in a hot, dark place. The parallel was undeniable. He pulled the old photograph again. Children posed stiffly before the school. In the background, the S.H. Styles truck. Not a bus. A moving truck. Why? He checked every record. No other transport company had ever been used. S.H. Styles had a monopoly. Field trips, transfers, everything. A new question hit him. What assets did S.H. Styles own? Properties, vehicles? He reached for the phone and dialed. County Recorder's Office. Rebecca speaking. "It's Walter. Sorry to call late." "Walter," she said, surprised. "Still working?" "I need a favor. Urgent. Any Styles, property records, deeds, ownership, anything. Walter, I can't just..." "It's tied to the girls, the murders, something big, decades deep." She was silent, then sighed. "Fine. Just this once. Come by first thing tomorrow. I'll have what you need." "Thank you, Becca. I owe you." As the phone clicked into silence, Walter leaned back, surrounded by files, photographs, and ghosts. The truth wasn't buried, it was waiting, in plain sight, wrapped in red tape and smiling faces. He just had to keep digging. "You owe me dinner at that new steakhouse," Becca teased, and an explanation. "Deal," Walter replied with a tired smile before hanging up. He slumped back into his chair, the exhaustion finally settling into his bones. The day had scraped him raw. His eyes stung from strain, and his mind swirled with a storm of questions and connections that felt both revelatory and maddeningly incomplete. The S.H. Styles Moving Company, the 1930 disappearances, the mayor's secretive relocation program. It all formed a grotesque puzzle he couldn't yet solve, and now, a boy's broken cries about red doors and unbearable heat echoed against the testimonies of survivors from nearly half a century ago. Walter knew he had to keep going, but his body had reached its limit. He locked the case files away and turned off the lights, the office sinking into darkness. As he stepped outside, the night air wrapped around him like a shroud. The quiet streets of Red Harvest whispered a deeper menace under the cover of darkness. Driving home, his headlights cut through the gloom, illuminating the hollow eyes of abandoned buildings and empty sidewalks. The town felt less like a place and more like a wound. Then, out of nowhere, a shadow darted across the road. Walter hit the brakes hard. A boy, no more than 14, ran barefoot and panicked across the asphalt, his tattered clothes flapping like warning flags. Walter's heart seized. He threw open the door. "Hey, are you okay? Do you need help?" The boy glanced over his shoulder, eyes wide with fear. He didn't slow, he ran faster. Walter gave chase, shouting, "I'm the sheriff, I can help you." But the boy was beyond hearing. Terror had drowned reason. He weaved between parked cars, desperate to escape something far worse than Walter. Two men emerged from the shadows like hunters. One grabbed the boy with alarming force, pinning his arms, while the other bound his wrists with rope. The boy screamed, a sound that stabbed Walter to his core. "Stop!" Walter shouted, hand on his weapon. "What's going on here?" The larger man, scar-faced and cold-eyed, scoffed. "Didn't the mayor tell you? We're rounding up these mongrels." The word hit Walter like a slap. Relocation. That was the word the mayor used. This wasn't relocation, it was a raid. "I need to see paperwork," Walter demanded. The younger man sneered. "You're either with us or in our way. We've got orders." Walter followed them as they dragged the boy to a truck. He felt a chill the moment he recognized the logo. S.H. Styles Moving Company, again. The scarred man sighed and handed over a document. Under the flickering streetlight, Walter read it. Official looking, signed by the mayor himself, and approved by S.H. Styles Management. Even Simon H. Styles Jr.'s signature scrawled across the bottom. They opened the truck's back doors. Walter's breath caught. Inside, 20 or more Indigenous children crouched in silence, eyes wide, limbs trembling, no voices, just the quiet despair of kids who had cried themselves mute. Walter's mind reeled. If he intervened now, he'd be fired, silenced, but to stand by and do nothing, he couldn't. "I'll escort you," he said. The men exchanged wary looks but nodded. Walter followed the truck through the desert, the road narrowing with each mile. Civilization vanished behind them. The route veered off the main path and into a remote compound, fenced, floodlit, ringed with barbed wire. It looked more like a prison than housing. "This place doesn't seem suitable," Walter said. "Not our problem," the younger man replied. "Who owns this facility?" S.H. Styles, or someone. Doesn't matter. Children were herded out of the truck like livestock. A stern woman with a clipboard ticked names as they passed. 23, all accounted for. Walter watched in silent fury. When the last child entered the building, the boy who had run turned back, his eyes locking with Walter's through the chain-linked fence. That look, pure pleading, burned into Walter's memory. The gate clanged shut. Walter climbed back into his patrol car, hands gripping the steering wheel like a lifeline. Something was deeply, irreversibly wrong. As he drove, the S.H. Styles truck disappeared into the black horizon, heading farther into the desert. A few miles down the road, Walter pulled into a gas station, a single neon sign blinking tiredly in the darkness. He needed a moment. Food. Coffee. Inside, the elderly clerk greeted him. "Evening, Sheriff. Long way from town." "Just passing through," Walter muttered, grabbing a sandwich, chips, and the bitterest coffee he could find. Back in the car, he rolled down the windows. Desert air washed over him. He took a bite of the sandwich, chewing mechanically, his mind far from the meal. That's when he saw it. Movement. In the rearview mirror, a shape slinked through the shadows. Walter stepped out, heart pounding. The figure emerged, barefoot, bleeding, desperate. The boy, the same one from earlier. He didn't run this time. Instead, he sprinted toward Walter, eyes brimming with relief. "You good, police?" he said in broken English. "Help, please." Before Walter could respond, the boy yanked open the patrol car door and jumped in. Walter followed quickly. "How did you get away? What happened?" "Friends," the boy said breathlessly. "You drive, please." Walter stared at him. "Why me? Why trust me now?" The boy met his eyes. "You good? I know." Walter didn't need more. He turned the key, the engine roared. The desert had kept its secrets for decades, but now it was time to bring them into the light. Walter scanned the empty gas station parking lot. No one seemed to be following. The boy sat beside him, tense and silent, his small chest still heaving from the earlier sprint. Just down the road, the compound they had left stood cloaked in unsettling quiet. Against every instinct telling him to retreat, Walter started the engine. The boy's stomach growled loudly. Walter handed over the half-eaten sandwich and bag of chips. Without hesitation, the child devoured the food, washing it down with the last of Walter's bitter coffee like it was his first meal in days. Then suddenly the boy froze. "See," he whispered, pointing. Walter turned to see headlights approaching from the direction of the compound. The S.H. Styles truck. But something was off. He could see small figures in the back. Children. The same ones who had just been unloaded. "They're reloading them?" Walter muttered, disbelief thick in his voice. The boy clutched Walter's sleeve, his voice trembling. "Friends, save, please follow." Walter hesitated. Everything inside him screamed to report it to HQ, to play by the book. But that desperation in the boy's eyes, the faith he was placing in Walter, wouldn't let him walk away. "Okay," he said softly, "we follow." With his headlights off, Walter tailed the truck, careful to keep a safe distance. The vehicle carved a path deeper into the desert, past the reach of city lights. The wilderness enveloped them, endless cactus silhouettes and moonlit shadows. The only sound was the engine's low growl and the wind whispering secrets through the sagebrush. After nearly 30 minutes, the truck slowed and veered off a crumbling road toward a hulking warehouse. Its walls were weather-worn and streaked with rust. A faded sign read, "Shiles Moving Equipment Storage Facility." Walter parked behind a cluster of boulders. "This isn't housing," he muttered, almost to himself. "It's a warehouse." The boy turned to him, tears forming in his eyes. "Please." Walter's heart twisted. "Tomorrow," he promised. "I'll check this place officially. I'll get help." But before he could say more, a figure emerged from the warehouse and began walking straight toward them. Walter stepped out to intercept, trying to mask his unease. The man looked unremarkable. Middle-aged, soft hands, the kind of face that spent years behind. "Sheriff," the man said with disarming calm. "I'm the warehouse manager. Didn't expect a delivery from law enforcement." He peered into the car and spotted the boy. A smile tugged at his lips, but it held no warmth. "Thank you for returning him. We were wondering where he'd run off to." Walter's options evaporated. He was miles from backup, no radio signal, and without legal grounds to intervene. Reluctantly, he opened the door. The boy's eyes met his, betrayed, pleading. Then the child shouted, "Red door! Barn! Red door!" The manager's expression shifted instantly. "Ignore him. Too much sun. Doesn't know what he's saying." Walter played along. "I'll head back then." "Yes, do," the man replied curtly. "If you have questions, take them to the mayor." Walter watched as the man took the boy by the arm, leading him toward the warehouse. The child stumbled, barefoot and exhausted. Walter returned to his car, but left the engine off. His instincts screamed. Something inside that warehouse was wrong, terribly wrong. As he watched, the boy suddenly twisted free, bolting. The manager gave chase, surprisingly fast. Within seconds, he caught the boy and struck him hard across the head. The child collapsed. Walter's hand hovered over his weapon, but he didn't move. Not yet. The manager slung the limp body over his shoulder and continued inside. Moments later, the warehouse swallowed them. Then came the sound, muffled at first, then unmistakable. Screaming, shrill, terrified young voices. Not one. Walter's blood froze. This wasn't relocation. This was trafficking, imprisonment, abuse. He gripped the wheel. He couldn't go in alone, but he couldn't leave it either. He started the engine. Driving fast, Walter pushed the car hard. The desert blurred around him. The gas station appeared like a lighthouse in the dark. He skidded into the lot and jumped out. The clerk startled awake. "I need your phone. Emergency," Walter barked. The man pointed to the payphone. Walter snatched the receiver and dialed. 1 ring, 2, 3. "Hello?" Herrera's groggy voice. "Miguel, it's Walter. I'm sorry to wake you, but I need you alert. This can't wait." There was rustling. "What time is it?" "Where are you?" Walter looked out at the road he'd just come from. "Miguel, we've got something big. Children, a warehouse. S.H. Styles, it's happening again, just like 1930. "You listen to me, carefully," Walter said, his voice urgent over the payphone. "That relocation plan the mayor talked about, I followed one of the trucks. They didn't go to a housing site, they took those kids to a warehouse. S.H. Styles owns it. It's nearly 3 hours outside of town. I heard screams, Miguel. I saw them knock a boy unconscious when he tried to run." There was a long pause. "Jesus, Walter," Herrera breathed. "You went in alone. That's insane." "It's not the point," Walter snapped. His hand trembled around the receiver. "There's something horribly wrong happening in that warehouse. The mayor and S.H. Styles are in this together. I'm sure of it." Herrera was quiet again, but Walter could sense the gears turning on the other end. "Tell me exactly what you saw," Herrera said finally. Walter took a breath, steadying his voice. "They beat that boy outside the warehouse, in the open. If they'll do that where someone might see, imagine what they're doing inside, behind locked doors. We need to act, now. We need a warrant." "I'll call Judge Baines," Herrera said after a beat. "He's decent, he still cares. Tell him this is connected to the old federal case, the missing class from 1930, and to today's homicides," Walter added. "That'll get his attention." "All right," Herrera said. "Stay at that gas station, I'll call you back." Walter hung up and began pacing. His nerves were on fire. The minutes crawled like hours. He bought another coffee just to have something to hold, something to distract his mind from spinning. He thought of the boy, the trust in his eyes. He'd believed in Walter. Walter couldn't fail him again. The phone rang. The clerk answered, then held out the receiver. "We've got the green light," Herrera said, straight to the point. "Judge signed off. I'm assembling a tactical team now. Peterson, Martinez, Kowalski. All solid. They won't ask questions." Walter exhaled deeply, a wave of gratitude washing over him. "Meet me here. It's about half an hour from the site." "Walter," Herrera said, his voice grave. "If you're wrong—" "I'm not," Walter said, voice low. "I heard those screams, Miguel. I saw it. God help us if you're right," Herrera said. "We'll be there within the hour." Walter stepped out into the cool desert night. The stars were silent overhead, indifferent, but Walter wasn't. He leaned against his patrol car and waited. Soon, the convoy arrived, 3 squad cars and a tactical van, moving like a silent force through the desert. No lights, no sirens, just purpose. Herrera rode shotgun, checking gear. "We've got 8 officers, 4 tactical. If they resist, we're ready." "I hope it doesn't come to that," Walter murmured. The warehouse emerged like a dark scar against the night sky. Walter signaled the team to halt. Herrera addressed the officers. "We have reports of children inside. Watch your fire. Check your targets." They fanned out, surrounding the building. Before they could knock, the main doors burst open. The warehouse manager Walter had met earlier stepped out, followed by several workers. "What's the meaning of this?" the man barked. "We have permits. The mayor signed off." Herrera stepped forward. "We have a court order," he said, flashing the warrant. "Step aside." The man read the document, his face draining of color. After a long moment, he stepped back. The team surged inside. The interior was a dusty, poorly lit shell of a building. Boxes, shelving, and rusted dollies cluttered the floor, but it felt staged. "Where are the kids?" Walter demanded. The manager said nothing, and Walter saw it. A fake box, oversized and oddly placed. He walked toward it. A red door had been painted crudely on the hidden side. "Red Door Barn," Walter whispered. He knocked. The sound was wrong, solid, not hollow. "It's plywood," he shouted, covering something. "Get away from there," the manager yelled. Too late. Officers restrained him while the tactical team cleared the boxes. They found a trapdoor in the concrete floor. "Bolt cutters," Herrera ordered. With a crack, the lock snapped. As the trapdoor opened, a foul stench hit them. Stale, old air, and from below, soft crying, whispers, shuffling. Walter shone his flashlight down. Dozens of children stared back. "Dear God," someone whispered. "Get them out," Walter said. A human chain formed. Children, some barely able to walk, others too scared to move, were lifted to safety. Walter and Herrera worked shoulder to shoulder, whispering comfort. "How many?" Herrera asked. 30, at least," an officer answered. Workers were cuffed, their protests ignored. The manager stared blankly as the kids emerged, his face hollow. "This'll make national news," Herrera said quietly. "I hope people care," Walter replied. "They have to." Herrera called in backup and medical units. 30 minors, immediate attention required. Just as they thought it was over, Martinez's voice echoed from below. "Sheriff, you need to see this." Walter and Herrera descended again. What they found was horrifying. The basement led into a warren of rooms, cells, restraints, rotting mattresses. A nightmare preserved in concrete. Walter ran his hand along the wall. "This has been here decades." At the corridor's end was a door. Heavy, new chains. Modern lock. "Someone's in there," Herrera said. "I hear movement." The chains fell away with a final metallic clatter, and the door creaked open slowly. The stench struck first. Unwashed bodies, human waste, the sour scent of despair. Then the beams of their flashlights landed on 2 women, gaunt, filthy, shielding their eyes from the sudden burst of light. One of the women locked eyes with Walter. She trembled and then wept, reaching out with brittle fingers. "Please, are you real? Are you really here?" Walter moved toward her, kneeling gently. "We're real. You're safe now. What's your name?" "Mary," she whispered, her voice dry with disuse. "Mary Two Rivers." She turned toward the second woman. "This is Adeline Runningbird." Walter studied them. Hollow cheeks, sunken eyes, hair like straw. They looked decades older than they were, their bodies shaped by starvation and silence. A dreadful thought formed in his mind. "By any chance," he asked gently, "are you connected to the missing children from 1930? Adeline nodded, her expression raw. "We're the only ones left. Everyone else is gone." Walter felt his throat tighten. "We'll talk more soon. Can you walk?" Mary glanced at the staircase, tears shining in her eyes. "We'll crawl if we have to." Walter and Herrera helped them ascend, one on each side. Their legs trembled with every step, muscles long unused fought against the light. But they didn't stop. Step by agonizing step, they climbed out of the darkness. "Almost there," Walter whispered. "Just a few more steps." When the two women emerged into the warehouse, they collapsed, sobbing as moonlight kissed their faces. Their cries broke the quiet like a hymn of survival. Officers turned away, blinking rapidly. Even the toughest among them were moved. Outside, dawn crept across the desert horizon. Ambulances pulled up, police lights casting chaotic shadows, and the last of the warehouse workers were loaded into vehicles, handcuffed and silent. Walter and Herrera led Mary and Adeline to the back of an ambulance, away from the commotion. They sat on the rear step, wrapped in silver thermal blankets, their eyes scanning the vast sky they hadn't seen in decades. "Can you tell us what happened?" Walter asked softly. Mary clutched the blanket. "It was supposed to be a field trip. We were going to the state capitol. We were excited. We'd never been anywhere." Adeline took over. "But instead of buses, they loaded us into SH-Styles moving trucks. We thought it strange, but the teachers said it was fine. They brought us here. Some were sent away by train. The rest of us stayed." "And the ones who stayed?" Herrera asked. Mary looked at him, her voice hardening. "Used. Played with. Controlled. We faked madness to survive, did chores, stayed quiet. That's how we lasted. We tried to escape once, 1935. Got all the way to town, but the sheriff and mayor were in on it. We were dragged back." She looked at Walter with tears. "Until now." Walter nodded slowly. "Do you know more about shot?" Mary hesitated. "We overheard things. Guards chatting, laughing. They trafficked people. Used racial politics to hide it. Indigenous kids were easy targets. No one missed us." Adeline looked at Walter, fear and hope warring in her face. "Is the world different now? Are our people safe?" Walter exchanged a look with Herrera. "It's not perfect," Walter admitted. "Boarding schools are shutting down, but discrimination, it's still real. SH-Styles ran a trafficking ring under a moving company logo," Walter added, "with political cover, for decades." "We believe it," Mary said. "The mayor was always involved. Who's mayor now?" "Douglas R. Krantz," Walter replied, "grandson of Franklin Krantz." Davian's expression hardened. "He knew. Franklin was the one in office when we vanished. He let it happen, covered it up." "Will you testify?" Walter asked. "Yes," they answered together, their frailty giving way to steel. "We have enough evidence now," Herrera said, pulling his radio. "Dispatch, this is Deputy Herrera. Initiate immediate warrant protocols. Suspects, Simon H. Styles, Jr., Mayor Douglas R. Krantz, and all S.H. Styles associates. Charges: kidnapping, human trafficking, false imprisonment, conspiracy." "Copy that, Deputy," came the response. "Teams mobilizing." Walter turned to watch medics tending to the rescued children, blankets wrapped around them like shields against a world that had failed them. Mary reached for his hand. "To see white officers rescuing us. We thought we'd die down there, but you gave us another chance." Herrera patted Walter on the back. "This was your doing, Walt. You never stopped digging." Adeline looked up. "You remembered us?" "Yes," Walter said quietly. "Your story haunted me. God led me here, and a murdered case, and a little courage." A medic stepped up. "We need to examine them. Most children are stable, malnourished, shaken, but they'll recover. As Mary and Adeline were helped into the ambulance, Walter saw a familiar face. Ashki, the boy who had escaped, who had trusted him. Walter knelt beside him. "Thank you. You were brave." Ashki gave a small smile. "My name is Ashki Nez. It means boy tall, like my grandfather." Walter smiled. "You saved everyone here. You're a hero." Ashki shook his head. "I just wanted to save Thomas B. We escaped together. We saw someone try to hurt 2 girls. Thomas tried to stop them. They killed the girls and framed him." Walter's heart froze. He scribbled notes. Ashki's testimony connected to the case. "We'll talk more at the station. Thomas needs you to tell the truth." He looked out across the field of trauma and resilience. These children had been betrayed, but not anymore. "We'll get you home," Walter promised. "And we'll make sure no one ever hurts you again." Herrera joined him. "Reporters are coming. The world will hear this." "Good," Walter said. "They need to see the truth." The sun crested the horizon, casting golden light over a world forever changed. "It won't be easy," Herrera said. "The fight's just beginning." Walter nodded. "But this is the first real step. They deserve dignity. They deserve to live." He watched as Ashki turned and waved from the ambulance. Justice had arrived, but redemption would be a longer road. "Let's go," Herrera said. "We've got arrests to make and a town to wake up." Together they walked toward their vehicles, the dawn stretching before them like a promise.